Roll Tide and welcome to Tide TV this week. I'm Roger Hoover, joined by my co-host, Kara Goldstein. Roll Tide, Kara.
Roll Tide, Roger. You know, it was A-Day this past Saturday on the campus of the University of Alabama, and the Crimson and White teams faced off against one another inside Bryant-Denny Stadium.
Yeah, and A-Day also started away from the field. The festivities began over at Denny Chimes.
It's tradition here at the capstone for the previous year's captains to be recognized at the annual Walk of Fame ceremony at Denny Chimes. The 2021 team captains honored this year were Bryce Young, Evan Neal, Fedarian Mathis, and Will Anderson Jr.
All four captains had their handprints and also footprints placed in cement at the base of Denny Chimes in recognition of their leadership, commitment, and excellence in representing the Crimson Tide.
Shortly after the Walk of Fame ceremony over at Denny Chimes, another ceremony was held to honor John Mitchell and Wilbur Jackson. They were the first African Americans to receive scholarships to play football for the Crimson Tide in 1971.
Today that we're going to pay recognition and tribute to leaders of our university. That's Wilbur Jackson and John Mitchell. 1, 2, 3.
Historic moment, fans lined up in front of Bryant-Denny at the Walk of Champions to cheer on the Crimson Tide as they entered the stadium. Inside Bryant-Denny, the Crimson and White teams squared off against one another. The Crimson team was mostly made up of the first team offense, while the White team had the first team defense.
White team took control of the game early. Senior Jack Martin kicked 3 first-half field goals, including one from 40 yards out. Redshirt freshman Jalen Milroe connected with Christian Leary for a 52-yard touchdown as the White team led the Crimson team 16-0 at the half.
Jack Martin connected on 3 field goals in the first half, and Will Reichard hit 3 in the second half, including this one coming up from 53 yards out to start the scoring in the third quarter. Then Jahmyr Gibbs, the transfer from Georgia Tech, made a splash in his Crimson Tide debut, 75 yards all the way to the house for the touchdown. That was the first points of the game for the Crimson team. That made it 22-7. Will Reichard finished the scoring off with one of his 3 field goals. This 42-yarder made it 25-7. And that would be the final score as the White team was victorious.
Probably one thing that impacted the game as much as anything was the front 7 on defense. It's probably a little further ahead than the offensive line with 2 starters out, only 1 starter back from last year. A lot of inexperienced players playing positions against some guys that are pretty good players, that are pretty good rushers. And, you know, that probably impacted the game a little bit, and we'll certainly try to improve that. I think we have. We'll do it, you know, in recruiting, and we'll do it every way that we can. So, but all in all, I thought we had a good spring. We had a lot of guys make a lot of progress. I think we know what we need to do. I think the important thing now is players can actually take where they are, regardless of where they are, and do the things they need to do over the course of the summer and fall camp to make the improvements that they need to make. So they got to be committed to that. And, you know, we obviously, you know, have some things that can be distractions to that in this day and age of football, but players' maturity to be able to do that is going to be very important in their development. And, you know, we want to continue to focus on the development of our players, personally, academically, and athletically. So it's also important that they finish the semester strong academically.
Running back Jahmyr Gibbs had a game-high 100 yards on 9 carries and a touchdown for the Crimson team, while Christian Leary had a game-high 5 catches for 106 yards and a touchdown for the White team. Crimson team quarterback Bryce Young completed 14 of his 29 passes for 153 yards, while Jalen Milroe went 11 for 23 for 149 yards and a touchdown for the White team.
Linebacker Jalen Moody had a game-high 9 tackles, including 1 sack for a loss of 8 yards, while linebacker Dallas Turner added 3 sacks. Will Anderson Jr. had 2 sacks and a fumble recovery for the White team, and defensive backs Jordan Battle and Christian Story both recorded interceptions. The Crimson Tide kickers went 6 for 6, with Jack Markin and Will Reichard connecting on 3 each.
Wow, a really big day for both defenses, but especially the first team defense on the White team. They finished with 10 sacks, 6 pass breakups, a fumble recovery, and an interception.
The A-Day game was the 15th and final practice of the spring for the Crimson Tide. After the A-Day contest, Coach Saban handed out the annual spring awards.
Jahmyr Gibbs took home the Dixie Howell Memorial Award given to the MVP of the A-Day game. Junior defensive lineman Jamil Burrows was named the game's top lineman, and those two awards were voted on by the media.
In all, 16 awards were handed out. For a complete list of the award winners, go online to rolltide.com.
The winners of the A-Day game, the white team, earned themselves a nice steak dinner, while the losing team, the Crimson team, had to settle for beans.
Yeah, let's take an all-access look as the Crimson Tide had their steak and beans dinner and also received their SEC championship rings this past Monday evening.
Steak dinner, Louis. Steak dinner.
Big steak guy.
Fingers and weenies. Show that thing look. I know this is white team for the win. Again, you feel me? I mean, some wings over there. We good.
You gotta do what you gotta do. You gotta do what you gotta do.
That's how you eat when you win it. Team white. You gotta get the details.
We won in the championship next week.
Tide TV This Week is presented by the University of Alabama, where legends are made. Ford, for great offers on F-150, see your local Ford dealer. Proud sponsor of the Crimson Tide.
William Havener is back. And Alabama is a winner. And Pinkney, huge. Swing and a miss. The Tide are a winner. Are you kidding me? He will slide in, and Bama wins it. Stop! It is all over. Owen Diodati.
Welcome back to Tide TV This Week. The Alabama gymnastics team made it to the final 8 teams in this year's NCAA championships in Fort Worth, Texas.
There were 2 4-team sessions with the top 2 teams from each session moving on to the Final 4 of the NCAA championships. The Tide faced off against Oklahoma, Utah, and Minnesota, needing to just be in the top 2 out of those 4 to move on.
The Crimson Tide opened the semifinal session with a 49-200 on the uneven bars, led by a 9.875 from Luisa Blanco. The Tide then totaled a 49-325 on the balance beam with a 9.9 from Shania Adams, while Blanco closed out the rotation on beam, tying the high score for the session with a 9.9-375.
The Tide scored 49-450 on the floor exercise, led by a 9.9-125 from Lily Hudson and Lexi Graber with a 9.925 in the anchor spot. Alabama finished with a 49-125 on the vault, led by a 9.9-125 from Blanco and a 9.875 in the leadoff spot from Shallon Olsen.
It wouldn't be enough, though, for the Tide to advance as Alabama finished 4th in the first session with a 197-100. Unfortunately, the Tide didn't get to add to that national championship total of 6, but they still had a great year, Roger. Alabama finished 2nd at the SEC championships and 1st in the regional semifinal.
And also several All-Americans, not a bad finish at all. The Alabama baseball team had a great start to their weekend as 24th-ranked Tide took on number 1 Tennessee, who had also been undefeated in SEC play so far this year.
Yeah, Tennessee got on the board early, scoring 2 runs on 4 hits in the first inning. But the Tide answered back with a solo home run from Owen Diodati in the top of the second, followed by a solo shot from Jim Jarvis in the third to even the score at 2-all. Alabama took the lead in the top of the 4th with 3 runs, highlighted by a go-ahead solo home run from Owen Diodati, his 2nd home run of the game.
Drew Williamson added an insurance run in the top of the 9th with a 2-out RBI triple. That brought home Dominic Temez to make it 6-3 Crimson Tide. After allowing 2 runs in the first, Garrett McMillan, he really settled down after that, only allowing 3 runs in 5+ innings of work to earn his 4th victory of the season. Later in the ballgame, Dylan Ray got the final 5 outs to pick up his 4th save of the year as Alabama handed number 1 Tennessee their first SEC loss of the season with the 6-3 win. The win was the Crimson Tide's 10th win in their last 11 games, including a season-high 8 in a row and 5th in a row over a top 10 opponent.
Yeah, the #1 ranked Volunteers did manage to bounce back to close out the series as they recorded wins in Game 2 and 3. Tennessee won Game 2 9-2 and Game 3 by a score of 15-4.
And with that win in Game 1, Alabama is 23-14 overall and still in a three-way tie for second place in the SEC at 8-7. Despite jumping out to a 3-0 lead earlier this week in their final midweek contest to UAB on Tuesday night, it was the Blazers, a winner 7-6.
The Alabama softball team used a couple of walk-off wins to win their series against Mississippi State. We'll show you how they did it coming up next here on TideTV This Week.
TideTV This Week is presented by the University of Alabama, where legends are made. Ford, for great offers on F-150, see your local Ford dealer. Proud sponsor of the Crimson Tide.
They're headed to the Women's College World Series. And the Alabama Crimson Tide are your SEC champions for the 6th time with a record-breaking run at the Rhodes House. And a perfect present for Montana Fouts and Alabama at the Women's College World Series. Gets away from the catcher. Here comes the runner, and Alabama wins it.
That's the way the series started for the second-ranked Alabama softball team against the Bulldogs of Mississippi State.
Alabama took on a very dangerous Mississippi State team for a 3-game series beginning this past Thursday night at Rhodes Stadium.
And what a way for the Crimson Tide to open up a series with a walk-off win on some alert base running by Savannah Woodard. In that Game 1 on Thursday, it was a pitcher's duel until the 6th inning. Montana Fouts had kept the Bulldogs at bay for 5 innings, striking out 8, but the Bulldogs struck first with a run on a sac fly to right field to take the 1-0 lead. Then freshman Megan Bloodworth stepped up to the plate and crushed the pitch high over the wall in left field, tying the game at 1 apiece.
So after that, folks, you just saw it a few moments ago with the runners on the corners and nobody out, Jenna Lord to the plate. The ball gets away from the Bulldogs catcher. Savannah Woodard scores from third for the walk-off win as the Crimson Tide took the series opener from the Bulldogs with the 2-1 win. And also Montana Fouts went the distance, striking out 11 in 7 innings for his 17th win on the year.
In Game 2 on Friday, the Mississippi State Bats woke up as the Bulldogs struck for 5 runs in the first 2 innings. Kaylee Tao got Bama on the board with a solo shot to left center in the bottom of the 2nd, and after another Bulldogs run in the 6th, the Tide really started rolling. Bailey Dowling led off the bottom of the 6th and crushed one out of the park in left field to make it 6-2. After a Kaylee Tao walk, it was Jenna Lord's turn. Lord sent the pitch back out over the wall in center field to cut the Bulldogs' lead to just 2 at 6-4.
Still down 2 in the bottom of the 7th. Allie Shipman hits it deep over the left field foul pole for the solo shot. That made it a 1-run game for the Tide with 1 out. Then Megan Bloodworth had a chance to win it for the Tide with the bases loaded as she crushed the pitch in the left, scoring 2 as the 2nd day in a row. The Tide walked off the Bulldogs as Alabama came from behind to defeat Mississippi State in Game 2, 7-6.
Going for the series sweep on Saturday, the game would be delayed a few hours due to weather, but once the rain lifted, it was all Montana Fouts. Just like in Game 1, Fouts went the distance, striking out 11 in 7 innings. This time, she held the Bulldogs scoreless for the complete game shutout. The Tide gave Fouts just enough run support for the win.
In the 3rd inning, Kat Grill laid down a bunt in front of home plate, trying not to out-hit Grill. The throw went from the catcher wide, carried down the right field corner. Grill never stopped when she rounded third as the cutoff throw bounced to the catcher in front of home plate. That allowed Grill to avoid the tag and dive into home for the inside the park homer. It's ruled a 4-base error, but the way Grill never gave it up, we're going to give it an inside the park home run all the way to her. And then in the 5th, Aubrey Barnhart sent a single back up the middle with the bases loaded to score 2. Crimson Tide earned the sweep of the Bulldogs with a 4-0 win in Game 3. The shutout victory for Alabama was the Crimson Tide's 12th of the season and 2nd in SEC play. It was a really big sweep for the Crimson Tide.
A huge sweep, Roger. And then on Tuesday, the Tide played a doubleheader against North Alabama and Alcorn State. Megan Bloodworth kept her hot weekend going as she started the game off for the Crimson Tide with a 3-run blast off the bottom of the scoreboard for her 7th home run of the season. Kelly Hevlin then crushed her first career home run to straightaway center in the 2nd to give Alabama the 4-0 lead.
Jayla Torrens picked up the win with 4 innings pitched, allowing just 1 hit and no runs, as the Crimson Tide got the win over UNA in Game 1 of the doubleheader, 6-1.
It was a pitcher's duel in Game 2 of the doubleheader against Alcorn State. There were only 4 hits in the game, with the Crimson Tide getting 3 of those. Alabama scored 4 runs, only 1 of those earned, but that was enough for the Tide to secure the win.
Lexi Kilfoyle was dominant in the circle, allowing just 1 hit with 9 strikeouts and 5 innings of work. Alex Salter came in to close out the game from there, and she didn't allow a hit in the final 2 innings as Alabama completed the doubleheader sweep with a 4-0 win over Alcorn State.
Montana Fouts had a huge weekend on the mound against Mississippi State. Fouts picked up all 3 wins against the Bulldogs, striking out 23 in 14-plus innings of work.
Fouts was also named the SEC Pitcher of the Week for the 3rd time this season and named one of the top 25 finalists for the USA Softball National Collegiate Player of the Year.
This weekend, Patrick Murphy's squad travels to College Station to take on the Aggies of Texas A&M for a 3-game series.
Also, the Alabama women's golf team upset the number 3 team in the country at the SEC Championships, and women's tennis picked up a big top 10 upset win at home as well. We'll have that and more coming up right here on Tide TV This Week.
William Haminer is back. And Alabama is a winner. Huge. Swing and a miss.
Turner, a winner. Are you kidding me?
He will slide in, and Bama wins it.
It is all over. Owen Diodati.
Welcome back to Tide TV This Week. The Alabama women's golf team was in action this past weekend, not too far from home.
Yeah, the Crimson Tide were in Birmingham competing for the SEC Championship at the Greystone Golf and Country Club.
The 9th-ranked Crimson Tide concluded the stroke play phase of the championship, earning the 6th seed to advance to match play. On Saturday, Alabama upset the 3rd-ranked team in the nation, South Carolina, 3-2 in the quarterfinals. In the semifinals, the Tide fell to number 2 seed LSU 3-1 with a tie. The Crimson Tide now wait to see where they will begin play for the regional round of the NCAA championships.
And congratulations to Benedetta Moresco. She was named the 2022 SEC Scholar Athlete of the Year. The sophomore has a 4.0 grade point average as a food and nutrition major, while she has been selected to the President's List and the SEC Academic Honor Roll every semester she's been in school. Moresco is also named the 2022 Arnold Palmer Cup Invitational Team.
A huge honor for Moresco. She is the 3rd SEC Scholar Athlete of the Year for the Crimson Tide since 2010.
The Alabama women's tennis team had a big weekend and a victory this past weekend. Jenny Mine's squad upset 10th-ranked Georgia here at home this past Friday. Let's take a look at some of the highlights and also hear from assistant coach Jonathan Burhane on the big win.
We talked all week during practice time about, we're playing a tough Georgia team. They have a lot of experience historically, always top 10, won the SEC last year. And we just talked about being resilient, putting in, having a good body language, putting in the effort, and, just stay relaxed and believe in yourself and just play your game. Yeah, the last match, Ola Pitak, Alexandra Pitak is her full name, and what a match. She's a grad student, but this is her first year in college, stepping up, playing a grad student, a 5th-year student from Georgia. That just tells you everything, her resiliency and what an effort she put in. I mean, that's what we talk about this season. We talk about, getting to these matches, a 3-all match, feeling that pressure and embracing it and, and just go for it. We talk about if it's a deuce point, if it's a final point, just believe in yourself and hit those shots and go for it. You got to trust yourself at the end of the day because they have the talent, they put in the work every day, but it's just about trusting yourself. And we're expecting the same kind of effort like today. Enjoy this win, and then the expectation is to go for it again, and have the same effort and bring that confidence into the tournament at the SEC tournament in Gainesville, Florida.
It was Alabama's 3rd-ranked win of the season and their first in the top 10. The Tide closed out the regular season on Sunday in a hard-fought 4-0 loss to number 26 Tennessee.
The men's tennis team closed out their regular season with a couple of tough matches on the road this past weekend. The Tide lost to 5th-ranked Tennessee 7-0 and 11th-ranked Georgia 5-2. After moving up 26 spots last week to number 10, this week the Alabama men's track and field team moved up to number 5 in the outdoor track and field rankings.
Mercy Chilengat broke her own school record in the 5,000 meters at the Mount Sac Relays in Walnut, California over the weekend. Chilengat finished with a time of 15:17:28. That time is also good for 10th all-time in collegiate history.
And Chilengat Kipsang made history on Friday night at the Brian Clay Invitational in Azusa, California. Kipsang finished with a time of 3:33.74 to win the 1,500 meters with the fastest time in collegiate history. He is now the only college runner in track and field history to go under 3:34 in the 1,500 meters. And with that record-breaking performance, Kipsang was named the SEC and National Runner of the Week.
And congratulations to the Alabama soccer team. The Tide defeated Auburn 2-1 on the road this past Friday night to remain undefeated in their spring season.
Stay with us as we'll reveal our plays and players of the week coming up next, right here on Tide TV This Week.
They're headed to the Women's College World Series.
And the Alabama Crimson Tide are your SEC champions for the 6th time with a record-breaking run at the Rhodes House. And a perfect present for Montana Fouts and Alabama at the Women's College World Series.
Bloodworth to left. That's down. Stevens scores. Tower will cross. Megan Bloodworth walks it off. A miracle comeback for the Crimson Tide.
Lawson swings a fly ball into right, hustling back on this Hammeter, reaches for it, dives for it, and makes the catch. William Hammeter, welcome back to right field.
Milrow taking the snap, looking deep. He's got a man down there. It's a foot race. Catch is made inside the 5. Touchdown, white team. There goes Gibbs up the middle across midfield. 35-30, 25-20, 15-10. One man to beat. Can't get him. Touchdown, Crimson.
Welcome back to Tide TV This Week. Those were our ATI Plays of the Week. Now let's take a look at our Players of the Week, brought to you by Legacy of Hope.
Montana Fouts picked up all 3 wins in the series sweep against Mississippi State, striking out 23 in 14 1/3 innings. Fouts led the SEC with 105 strikeouts in conference play, which is higher than the next 2 leading pitchers combined. And for that, she was named the SEC Pitcher of the Week for the 3rd time this season.
And freshman Megan Bloodworth had a big weekend at the plate. Starting off in Game 1, Bloodworth had a solo home run in the 2-1 win over MSU. Then in Game 2, she gave Alabama the walk-off with a 2-run double with the bases loaded in the bottom of the 7th. And if that wasn't enough, she added a 3-run homer in the first inning of Alabama's 6-1 victory over North Alabama on Tuesday night. What a great couple days for the freshman Megan Bloodworth.
Owen Diodati had a nice weekend at the plate for baseball as well, as Owen Diodati hit 2 home runs in the 6-3 win over number 1 Tennessee in Game 1. With the help of Diodati's 2 home runs, Alabama handed number 1 Tennessee their first SEC loss of the season.
And we finished with a couple of historic performances in track and field. Mercy Chilengat broke her school record in the 5,000 meters with a time of 15:17.28, 10th all-time in collegiate history.
And Elliot Kipsang won the 1,500 meters, finishing with a time of 3:33.74, the fastest time in collegiate history. Kipsang is the only college runner in track and field history to go under 3:34 in the 1,500 meters. And with that record-breaking performance, Kipsang was named the SEC and National Runner of the Week. And those are our Legacy of Hope Players of the Week. Roger, some really great performances this week.
Absolutely, and make sure you tune in next week, as that will be our final show until next fall. You don't want to miss it. We'll go all access with the Tide's new volleyball coach, and we'll also have our favorite images of the year. All that and more coming up on the final show of the spring next week.
I can't believe the final show is almost here. We'll see you next week, everybody. Roll Tide.
Roll Tide.
This has been a presentation from Learfield.